What's happening, fam? John here from AF Anime, and I am back to talk about yet another Dragon Ball Super chapter, this time for chapter 84, which is titled A People's Pride. I suppose the first thing to talk about when it comes to this chapter is going to be the flashback that we got. Now, it only lasted about 4 or 5 pages, and to be honest, some of it is stuff we've already seen, but it looks like Bardock basically goes straight home after his fight with Gas, or at least as soon as he's on his feet. And then he is greeted by his wife, to which he goes out shortly after, and then returns, and Goku apparently has some memories of waking up while in his incubation tube or whatever that is. And it is from this tube that we actually get a lot of imagery that we see from a young Goku's eyes. And we see Bardock coming home and him being received by Goku's mom, Gine, and we even see some images of her just kind of living her everyday life alongside with Raditz, and even some random Saiyan woman who we've never seen or heard of before. And this flashback involving a young Goku and Bardock and his family, it kind of culminates in the exact same way that the Dragon Ball Super movie did when they did their explanation of Bardock, making him canon. Okay, so some thoughts about the flashback. For one, I thought it was well paced, and I thought it was well thought out in terms of having it kind of mesh with Dragon Ball Super, considering that that movie is supposed to be canon. And another thing that I actually liked about this flashback is the kind of slice of life imagery that we get to see from Gine and Raditz as they kind of just go about their lives as Goku's in his incubation chamber. We even get to see this random female Saiyan who apparently just stops by to hang out with Gine as she's just going about her daily life. And another cool thing about this flashback is that it is intended to be strictly through Goku's perspective, or Kakarot's perspective, as every image that we see in this flashback is from the exact same point of view within the house, that same little circular window being present in every scene. Well, admittedly, this is a very small detail when it comes to the grand scheme of this flashback, but it is a nice, refreshing spin on storytelling when it comes to covering material that we kind of already knew or could have inferred from seeing the Dragon Ball Super movie and its explanation for Goku's survival. So if and when this scene is eventually animated, I think it's going to provide a very powerful scene that'll be a little bit uncommon for how Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Super has ever been presented. And another cool aspect about this flashback is the way that Goku's mother and her friend were presented. It might actually have deeper implications, considering that most of the Saiyans that we know of are battle hungry and rather crass in terms of how they approach things, but it might be possible that with this new canon explanation, it might show that these Saiyan women in particular might be of a different ilk than these Saiyan males. Anyways, those are kind of just my random thoughts about the flashback. Even though it is very short and we're talking less than 5 pages, I really did find it enjoyable. Moving along though, we get a little bit of dialogue between Goku and Vegeta talking about their aspects or their concepts of Saiyan pride and how it relates to their lack of faith in their own power. Honestly, I don't really know how to interpret that, because having a faith in their own power really has never been an issue for Goku or Vegeta throughout the entirety of the series. Both have been fairly arrogant in terms of knowing themselves to be incredibly strong and then challenging themselves by fighting whoever they can. However though, with Vegeta, this is a kind of interesting concept, because the whole point of his God of Destruction powers and his, new transformation of alter ego are kind of centered around him wanting to take on the burdens of the sin of the Saiyans and more or less saying that he's accepted them. But this is something a little bit different. So I want to say that this might imply that both of these characters, Goku and Vegeta, might actually get some kind of change when it comes to their depiction or their display of power, especially when it comes to their transformations of Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct. But their dialogue about this realization is actually supported by Minato, who gives them a little bit of an inspiring speech about what it means to have pride in one's race. And I kind of like this aspect of Minato because it kind of gives him a little bit more of a wise approach to the situation, whereas he's mainly been around for exposition throughout this entire arc. Speaking of Minato, he offers to patch Goku and Vegeta up, to which they both accept and thank him, and then he turns around and manifests clothes, which seems to be a Namekian ability apparently, but the clothes he does manifest for Goku and Vegeta are actually Saiyan armor that matches Bardock's. And for the most part, this is just done for fan service, because we don't get any more than like 2 panels with them being in this Saiyan armor before they ask to be switched back to the original outfits. And look, this might just be a personal preference of mine, but I would have loved to have seen them engage in the fight for this chapter while wearing this armor, as it could have served for Akira Toriyama and Toyotaro to kind of really sell us on the idea that Goku and Vegeta have truly accepted themselves, and come to a realization about their own forms of Saiyan pride. Also, they could be missing out on a marketing opportunity here, because seeing the Ultra forms of Goku and Vegeta while wearing the Saiyan armor might have been something very unique and very cool, and something that they could have pushed into the video games or the cell phone games or even the trading card games. But at the very least, it was still very cool to see. The next thing worth talking about is the Heater clan and their presence within this chapter, and the dialogue back and forth between them isn't really super important or enlightening, but it does also sell us on the idea that there are redeeming qualities, or at the very least a good sibling bond when it comes to all of the Heater clan members, with the exception of Elec, who seems to be very cold and very calculated and increasingly distant from the well-being of his siblings. Elec does, however, opt to go watch his little brothers fight, and as he arrives, there's a little bit of trash talk between Gas, Goku, and Vegeta, but ultimately Vegeta and Goku both agree that they're going to fight him at the same time. And it's at this point that we get a dual power-up scene between Goku and Vegeta, standing side by side in a fashion that's very reminiscent to the Tournament of Power, where he and Goku both powered up when they were going to face off against Jiren. In any case, the transformations go successfully. Goku goes into his Ultra Instinct, or his Super Duper Instinct, and then Vegeta goes into his Ultra Ego, or his Massive Ego Boost. Or I mean, at least that's how Oil heard it. Now what comes next, or at least for the remainder of the chapter, is just a long fight between Goku, Vegeta, and Gas, but there is one small interesting bit of dialogue when it comes to Vegeta and him saying that it's not about the odds, it's just about the sheer desire to win. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure in exactly what's being implied here, if it's more about the competitive nature of Saiyans or if it's about the survivalist nature of Saiyans. Either way, I'm sure we will get more of an elaboration on that before this fight comes to its end, but the fight goes on for a little bit and pretty much goes into the end of the chapter, and there are some really cool aspects to this fight that I want to talk about. First and foremost, if you take a close look at how Goku and Vegeta are fighting throughout this chapter, both of their fighting forms are very true to their Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct respectively. Goku seems to be fighting with a lot of tact and precision, and Vegeta really just seems to be going with haymakers and mollywops, trying to basically take Gas's head off in one swipe. And this is actually a really good narrative technique, especially when Goku and Vegeta are juxtaposed to each other in the same fight. Obviously, we know that Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct are entirely two different forms and meant to be different, but the differences that they have are really emphasized when it comes to them fighting in the exact same fight and at the same time. We see Goku going in for, light attacks, throwing multiple punches and kicks at the same time, but nothing really super powerful. And then we got Vegeta coming in and just destroying shit as he's trying to get a hold of Gas. And when it comes to this Ultra Ego form, we obviously knew that to some extent it was a tank. That's how he explained it while fighting Granola. But again, alongside Goku, this really does have a chance to shine and stand out. We even see at some point during this fight, Vegeta uses a God of Destruction technique, and again, another callback to the Tournament of Power. He goads his opponent into actually trying to take the attack. And for the most part, he actually does. He manifests a shield on his arm and then proceeds to tank Vegeta's attack, and then eventually ends up knocking it back towards Vegeta. Goku does help out for a little bit, but ultimately they are overpowered by Gas, and eventually, as he is overpowered, Vegeta just jumps over the beam, leaving Goku stuck with it by himself, and then engages Gas in a fight on his own. Goku does eventually manage to deflect this attack all the way up into the sky or into space or whatever, but Vegeta takes on Gas by himself for a little bit and even manages to get the upper hand for a quick second. And then as the fight wraps up for this chapter, at least, Vegeta is taking some hits and taking some damage, getting a little bit of trash talk in from him and Gas respectively. And then at the end of the chapter, Vegeta states that him taking damage basically means nothing and that he's only getting stronger. And unlike his fight with Granola, where he's consistently getting beat up more and more to the point to where he can't even take it, this time he actually does manage to do some damage against Gas, to which Gas responds that he must be using some kind of trick. And after this accusation, Vegeta responds that he should notice that he's only getting stronger. And that is a great way to end this chapter, considering how we saw Vegeta in his Ultra Ego form back when he fought Granola in comparison to what he's doing with it now. So now that we've hit all of the major talking points about this chapter, I'm going to go ahead and give it a rating, and I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Honestly, it was very close to a perfect 10 in terms of story and in terms of hype. My main issue with this chapter though is going to be with its artwork. Now, Dragon Ball Super has been fairly consistent when it comes to giving us good artwork, amazing lines, amazing details, amazing black levels, but for some reason, I don't know if they were just very satisfied with this chapter's flashback and the story content and the dialogue, but the artwork really really seem to take a back seat when it comes to this chapter's quality. But aside from that artwork issue, I think this chapter was just flat out amazing on all their aspects. If they really put a little more effort into the artwork, it absolutely would be a perfect. But for that reason, this chapter is just gonna have to settle at an 8.5 out of 10. Now, for the most part, I've already talked about everything that I want to discuss or break down about this chapter. There are a couple things that are worth thinking about or pondering on. The first of which would be the amount of time that passes between Bardock returning home from his fight with Gas to him sending Goku off. Obviously, if you pay attention to the artwork, you can see that when he comes back from his fight with Gas, he has no tail, or at the very least, if the tail is there, it's very difficult to see because of the way the frame is set up. However, we do know that when he does arrive back to send Goku off to Earth, he does in fact have his tail, as we saw in the Broly clip where he's destroyed in the same fashion he was in his TV special. Now, I have more thoughts about Bardock, but I am currently working on a Bardock video, so if you guys want to see that, do stay tuned. The next thing that's worth talking about in this chapter is the Saiyan pride, or the newfound respect and care when it comes to them being Saiyans, at least when it comes to Goku and Vegeta. These are two characters who are horribly familiar with the Dragon Balls, and I've always had in the back of my mind at some point that Vegeta, or maybe even someone else, might wish back the Saiyan race. Seeing as how they were all killed by Vegeta and not by a meteor, they didn't die of natural causes, therefore they would be eligible for resurrection. Maybe not the planet itself, but the people. And even though the Saiyan race for the most part was seen as violent or even barbaric, we do know after looking at the Saiyan race from Universe 6 that eventually, if given enough time, they probably could or would evolve into the same type of Saiyans that we see over there. Now, ultimately, I don't really foresee a future where Akira Toriyama and Toyotaro want to bring back all of these Saiyan race, but there is a small possibility growing when it comes to how this chapter went down, and personally, I would love to see it. Obviously, they could raise some problems of their own or have some newfound arrogance if Frieza, decides to leave them be, but at the same time, that could easily be remedied by just the sheer fact that their Prince Vegeta, would still be alive and probably commanding them to do as he says, or at the very least that if any of the Saiyans get out of line, Goku, Vegeta, and arguably any Earthling at this point would probably put the hands to them with the quickness. Now, I'll have more on that idea or that topic here in a little while. I'll probably do another separate video discussing that probability or that possibility. I'm sorry, I haven't really been putting out a whole lot of Dragon Ball related content outside of the monthly reviews. I'm going to try to crank out a few more videos and see if we can get some content going that's relevant to upcoming stuff and not just about old movies or old Dragon Ball related content. So with that being said, if you guys want more Dragon Ball related content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or comment down below any ideas or thoughts you might have on things that I could cover on this channel. In any case, guys, that's going to do it for my review for chapter 84 of Dragon Ball Super, an amazing chapter. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.